The year was 2154, and humanity had reached the stars. After centuries of technological advancements, Earth had expanded its influence into space. But with great power came great danger. The human race was not alone in the galaxy. Over time, they had encountered numerous alien species, each more powerful and intimidating than the last. But there was one race that stood above all others, the Kyrae, a race of highly advanced, ruthless conquerors who viewed all other life forms as inferior. The Kyrae had invaded countless star systems, and they believed that the galaxy belonged to them. They had never considered the humans as a threat until now. The humans were not the strongest, nor the fastest. But there was something about their spirit that caught the Kyrae off guard. Captain Alia Zane stood at the helm of the human fleet's flagship, the Seraphim, her dark eyes scanning the holographic display of the enemy's warship. The Kyrae fleet was massive, each ship a fortress of destruction. The odds were not in their favor. But Captain Zane was no stranger to impossible odds. "We're outnumbered," Captain Lieutenant Mira Thompson said, her voice tense over the coms. "The Kyrae fleet has us surrounded. It's only a matter of time before they launch their assault." Okay. Zane stood silently for a moment, her gaze fixed on the glowing blue lines of the Kyrae fleet, each one a looming threat. She could feel the weight of her crew's hopes resting on her shoulders. Earth's future depended on them. "We've been through worse," Captain Zane replied, her voice steady. "Prepare to engage. Let's show them what humanity is capable of." The crew of the Seraphim had seen their fair share of battles, but this was different. The Kyrae were ruthless, and they had no interest in negotiating. Their only goal was domination. Yet, despite the overwhelming odds, humanity had something the Kyrae didn't: heart. The Seraphim's engines roared to life as it broke through the vastness of space, closing the distance between the two fleets. The crew worked in perfect harmony, their movements swift and efficient. As they neared the Kyrae flagship, Zane's tactical officer, Commander Marcus Reed, initiated the battle plan. "We'll target their weak points first," Reed instructed. "Concentrate fire on their engines and weapon systems. If we can disable their ability to strike, we might have a chance." The first wave of fire from the Seraphim hit the Kyrae warship's shields, sending shockwaves through the surrounding space. The Kyrae returned fire immediately, but the humans had anticipated this. Their shields held firm, and the Seraphim swiftly adjusted course, dodging the incoming barrage. The battle was just beginning, but already the humans were showing their skill and resilience. Despite the Kyrae's overwhelming firepower, the humans fought back with everything they had. The Seraphim's weapons unleashed a hail of lasers, targeting the Kyrae flagship's vulnerable sections. The Kyrae ships retaliated, launching devastating missiles. But the human fleet was agile, darting in and out of enemy fire with incredible precision. On the bridge of the Seraphim, Captain Zane's face remained calm as she directed her crew with unwavering focus. Every move, every decision was crucial. The humans had one shot at this. Failure wasn't an option. As the battle raged on, Zane noticed something odd. The Kyrae ship seemed to be withdrawing, pulling back in a way that suggested hesitation. The Kyrae were known for their unyielding aggression, but now there was a shift in their tactics. "Why are they pulling back?" Zane asked, her brow furrowing. She wasn't about to let up, but this was strange. Reed quickly analyzed the data. "It's not a retreat, Captain. It looks like they're regrouping, preparing something." Before Zane could respond, a massive explosion rocked the Seraphim, and the lights flickered across the bridge. The ship's shields held, but the force of the blast sent a ripple of unease through the crew. The Kyrae were preparing something far more devastating than anticipated. "Brace for impact." Zane shouted as she grabbed the controls, trying to keep the ship steady. But it was too late. A blinding flash of light enveloped the Seraphim, followed by a deep, echoing hum. The Kyrae had unleashed their ultimate weapon, a weapon capable of disabling all human technology. It was a devastating EMP blast, designed to render their enemies helpless. The bridge was plunged into darkness, and the Seraphim lurched violently as its systems began to fail. The ship's engines sputtered, and the communication systems went dead. The crew, once full of confidence, now found themselves trapped in the dark void of space. For a moment, Captain Zane thought all was lost. But then she remembered something. The KIE may have the technology, the firepower, but humanity had something else, the will to survive. "We're not giving up," she said firmly. "Get the backup systems online. We've fought too hard to lose now." Her crew, though shaken, rallied to her side. The backup generators hummed to life, and the emergency systems blinked on. The Seraphim was far from powerless. But they were now fighting with one hand tied behind their backs. In the Karay flagship, High Commander Vecker watched the human ship struggle. He was pleased by their resilience, but saw it as futile. "They will be crushed soon enough," he muttered to himself, knowing the humans were too weak to defeat them. But what he didn't know was that the fight was far from over, as the human fleet regained some semblance of control. Zane's mind raced. The Carey had shown their cards, but the humans weren't going to play by their rules. They had one chance left, and Captain Zane wasn't going to let it slip away. "We may not be the strongest, but we're not afraid," she said, rallying her crew. "This is humanity's last stand. Let's give them everything we've got." The battle was about to enter its next phase. Captain Aliyah Zane gripped the controls of the Seraphim, her knuckles turning white with the pressure. The emergency lights flickered overhead, casting eerie shadows across the bridge. The K-ray SEMP blast had crippled the ship's systems, leaving them with barely enough power to keep moving. The sound of the crew working quickly to restore. The backup systems filled the tense silence. Lieutenant Thompson was at the helm, her face a mask of concentration as she fought to keep the ship from drifting into enemy fire. Commander Reed stood at the communications console, his hands moving rapidly as he tried to re-establish contact with the other ships in the human fleet. "Captain," Red said, his voice tight with urgency, "the K-ray are regrouping. Their ships are forming a tight formation. They're preparing something bigger." Zane's mind raced. The K-ray were playing for keeps, and the humans were running out of time. The EMP had been a powerful weapon, but it wasn't the K-ray's final move. The humans still had one chance to turn the tide of the battle. "We need to get our weapons back online now," Zane said, her voice sharp. "We can't afford to wait." "Almost there," Thompson replied, her hands moving over the controls. The hum of the backup generators filled the bridge as the ship's systems slowly came back to life. The communications array buzzed as Reed reconnected with the fleet. "Seraphim to all ships. This is Captain Zane. We need to launch a full offensive." "We're not backing down," Zane commanded, her voice steady despite the chaos around her. The comms crackled, and the response from the other ships was immediate. "Understood, Captain." "We're with you," came the voice of Admiral Sandra Hayes from the Perseus, one of the largest ships in the human fleet. The fleet was scattered across the battlefield, but the humans were united in their resolve. "We're back in business," Reed said, as the ship's weapon systems powered up. "Ready to fight, Captain?" Zane nodded. It was time to show the Karay what humanity could do. Outside the Seraphim, the battle raged on. The K-ray fleet, with its powerful warships and devastating weapons, was a terrifying sight. Their ships gleamed with deadly intent as they moved in a coordinated formation. Prepared to crush the humans once and for all, on the bridge of the Karay flagship, High Commander Vecker watched with cold eyes as the human ships attempted to regroup. His expression was unreadable, but inside, he was impressed. The humans had a tenacity he had not expected, but he knew this would not save them. They were outmatched, and their resistance was futile. "Prepare the final strike," Vecker commanded, his voice low and commanding. "Activate the vortex cannon." The vortex cannon was the K-ray's ultimate weapon, a massive energy beam capable of tearing through entire fleets. The Karay had used it in previous conquests to wipe out entire civilizations, and now it was aimed directly at the human fleet. Back aboard the Seraphim, Zane watched as the K-ray fleet moved into position. They were preparing their final strike, but the humans had no intention of letting them win. The bridge was filled with the sounds of rapid typing and constant updates as the crew worked together to form a plan. We need to take down their flagship, Zane said, her voice calm but firm. If we can disable their command ship, the rest of their fleet will fall apart. Everyone, focus on the K-Ray flagship. That's our target. Commander Reed was already inputting coordinates for a direct strike. Firing solutions locked in, Captain. All systems are go. Zane nodded. Let's do it. The Seraphim surged forward, its weapons lighting up the void of space. A barrage of lasers shot out, targeting the K-Ray flagship. The Kray returned fire with devastating force, their weapons streaking through the darkness. But the Seraphim was agile, dodging and weaving between the blasts as it closed the gap. Direct hit, shouted Thompson, her eyes focused on the controls. They've taken some damage, but they're returning fire. Zane's heart raced as she watched the K-Ray flagship fire its deadly energy weapons. The Seraphim's shields flared brightly under the strain, but they held. The ship had survived worse, and Zane wasn't about to let this be the end. Reed, target their vortex cannon, Zane ordered. If we don't take that out, it's over for us. Reed worked quickly, his fingers flying across the console. Targeting now. It's their main weapon, Captain. If we hit it, we might have a shot at winning. The Seraphim fired again, this time aiming directly at the heart of the K-Ray flagship. The shot hit the vortex cannon, causing a massive explosion that lit up the surrounding space. For a brief moment, everything seemed to pause. The Kray flagship staggered, its systems flickering. The human fleet held its breath, and then the Kray flagship responded. A deep rumble shook the very fabric of space as the vortex cannon fired, its massive energy beam shooting directly toward the human fleet. The energy pulse was unlike anything the humans had ever encountered, immense, destructive, and fast. Brace for impact, Zane shouted, her voice full of urgency. The beam struck the human fleet, tearing through several ships in an instant. One by one, the human vessels erupted in bright bursts of light. As they were obliterated by the sheer power of the KIE weapon, Zane's heart sank as she watched the destruction unfold. But they weren't finished yet. The humans still had one last weapon in their arsenal, human ingenuity. Thompson, get us out of here, Zane ordered. Full power to the engines? Thompson slammed her hands down on the controls, and the Seraphim's engines roared to life. The ship darted away from the Karay's deadly beam, narrowly avoiding being caught in the blast. We've lost several ships, Reed said, his voice grim. But we're still in the fight. Zane didn't respond. She was too focused on the task at hand. The Seraphim was damaged, but it wasn't destroyed. The fight was still on. We can do this, Zane muttered to herself. We just need one more chance. The Karai fleet was still formidable, but there was a crack in their armor. The Seraphim had done the impossible, survived the first wave of the vortex cannon and managed to deal significant damage to the flagship. The K-Ray were not invincible, after all, but the next few minutes would decide the fate of humanity. On the bridge of the Seraphim, Captain Zane took a deep breath. She knew that the battle was far from over. The KRA would come back with everything they had. The humans had no choice but to fight until the very end. But humanity had proven something in that moment. They weren't just survivors, they were fighters. And as long as they had breath in their lungs, they would never give up. Let's finish this, Zane said, her voice steady. We're going in for the kill. The Seraphim surged forward again, its remaining weapons charging for one last strike. The human fleet followed in its wake, determined to win this battle for Earth, for humanity, and for their future. The Seraphim darted through space, weaving in and out of incoming Karay fire. Captain Aaliyah Zane's grip on the controls tightened. The battle was not over, far from it. The humans had managed to cripple the Karai flagship's vortex cannon, but the Karai were far from defeated. They were enraged, their attacks becoming even more aggressive and deadly. The K-Ray fleet was relentless, and the human ships were dwindling. If they didn't make a final push now, all would be lost. We're down to 2 remaining warships, Captain Lieutenant Thompson reported, her voice grim. The rest of the fleet has either been destroyed or disabled. Zane's heart sank. The Seraphim was one of the last standing ships, And if it fell, humanity's hope for survival would go with it. But she wouldn't give up. She couldn't. "We're not done yet," Zane said firmly. "Prepare for a final assault. We need to take out their command ship now." The crew scrambled into action, each member moving with precision and urgency. Commander Reed was already working on the targeting systems, his focus unwavering. "Captain Reed said, his voice urgent, "We've got one shot at this. We can overload the Seraphim's core and make a direct strike on the K-Ray flagship. It will be a suicide mission, but if we time it right, we can destroy their command center and cripple their fleet." Zane's eyes locked with Reed's. The plan was dangerous, but it was the only way. "We're out of options." "Let's do it," understood Reed replied. The Seraphim had already taken heavy damage, but it still had power. The crew had repaired what they could, but the ship was barely holding together. The K-Ray flagship was within striking distance, its dark silhouette looming ahead, surrounded by a swarm of enemy ships. Zane knew this would be their last chance to win. On the K-Ray flagship, High Commander Vecker stood on the bridge, his eyes narrowed as he watched the human ship approach. The Seraphim had caused significant damage to their fleet, but now it seemed to be coming straight at them. "They're making a last stand," Vecker muttered under his breath. He could feel the anger boiling inside him. The humans had defied all expectations, but he would not let them win. "Prepare the secondary weapons. We will destroy them once and for all." He didn't believe for a second that the humans could pull off a final attack, but he wasn't about to take any chances. The K-Ray fleet positioned itself around their flagship, ready to crush whatever was left of humanity's resistance. "Almost there," Lieutenant Thompson said, as she guided the Seraphim toward the K-Ray flagship. The ship's weapon systems were recharged and ready, but Zane knew it wasn't enough. They had to hit the heart of the K-Ray fleet, and they had to do it fast. "Reed's status?" Zane asked. "Core systems are primed," Reed answered. "We're ready to overload the core and make a kamikaze run at their command ship. It's going to be close." Zane glanced at the battle unfolding outside the ship. The remaining K-Ray ships were closing in, but the Seraphim was too fast, dodging their fire with ease. "This is it," Zane said, her voice steady but filled with resolve. "Let's finish this." She steered the ship toward the K-Ray flagship, the crew bracing themselves for the final push. Every instinct told her that this would be the end, but she couldn't give up, not after everything they had been through. The human race was on the brink of extinction, but humanity's spirit would never die. The Seraphim accelerated its engines, roaring as it plunged straight into the heart of the K-Ray fleet. The K-Ray ships fired relentlessly, their lasers and missiles streaking toward the human vessel. But the Seraphim was like a dart, moving with deadly precision. It was a calculated risk, but Zane knew it was the only option. "Captain, the K-Ray are closing in," Thompson warned. "We're almost in range." Zane's heart raced as the K-Ray flagship grew larger in the viewport. She could see the K-Ray fleet moving to intercept them, but the Seraphim was faster. The ship shuddered as it took a few hits, but the hull held. They were almost there. "Now, Reed," Zane shouted, overloading the core. "Now." Reed's voice was filled with urgency. The Seraphim's core began to hum as it built up power, ready to unleash a final destructive burst of energy. Ship's weapon systems locked onto the K-Ray flagship, and in that moment, everything seemed to slow down. Zane's mind raced, but she remained focused. There was no turning back now. The ship would overload in minutes, and if they didn't destroy the K-Ray flagship, they would all die in the blast. "Thompson, keep us on course," Zane commanded. "Don't stop until we're in position." On the K-Ray flagship, Becker's eyes widened as the Seraphim charged forward, its engines glowing brightly with a destructive energy. He realized too late what the humans were planning. "They're coming right at us." One of his officers shouted, "They're going to ram us, Veckers." Hart skipped a beat. Humans had nothing left to lose, and they were throwing everything into this final attack. There was no way to stop them now. The K-Ray flagship began to fire its remaining weapons, but it was too slow. The Seraphim had closed the gap. "Prepare for impact," Becker ordered, his voice shaking for the first time in the battle. With a loud, deafening roar, the Seraphim collided with the K-Ray flagship. The force of the impact sent shockwaves throughout both ships. The human ship's core exploded, releasing an immense burst of energy that tore through the K-Ray flagship. Kuza's shockwave rippled outward, knocking the remaining K-Ray ships off course. Inside the Seraphim, the crew was thrown into chaos. The ship groaned under the strain, and alarms blared as the lights flickered. But Zane and her crew held on, knowing they had done the impossible. On the K-Ray flagship, Vecker's command center erupted in flames as the Seraphim's explosion tore through the heart of the K-Ray ship. The flagship's main reactor went critical, and the entire ship began to break apart. Vecker screamed in rage as the K-Ray fleet disintegrated around him. The Seraphim was gone. But in its wake, the K-Ray fleet was shattered. The remaining human ships, though damaged, continued to press forward. The K-Ray had lost their command ship, their leadership shattered. The human fleet took advantage of the chaos, launching a final counterattack. The K-Ray forces, now disorganized and leaderless, began to retreat. Captain Zane's last thoughts, as the Seraphim exploded, were of her crew. They had done what no one thought possible. They had faced overwhelming odds and had given everything to protect Earth and the future of humanity. Back on Earth, news of the victory spread like wildfire. Humanity had done it. The K-Ray, once thought unbeatable, were no more. The people of Earth celebrated, knowing they owed their survival to the bravery and determination of their heroes Captain Zane and her crew. Though the Seraphim was gone, the message was clear: humanity would never be defeated. The spirit of mankind was unbreakable, and they had proved it, standing tall against a galaxy of enemies. As the human fleet returned home, Earth's skies were free once more, and humanity had earned its place among the stars.